Welcome back to Zarila HOA Stories. Drop your country or city name in comments. Chapter 1. The Perfect Neighborhood with Ugly Secrets. I've spent my career wading through the darkest corners of humanity. 20 years in law enforcement, 12 of them as chief of police, and I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. Drug busts, homicides, extortion, even corrupt politicians. I've seen it all. But nothing prepared me for the nightmare wrapped in pastel-colored siding and picket fences. The neighborhood brochure called it Whispering Pines Estates. Sounds peaceful, doesn't it? The kind of place where families ride bikes at sunset, sprinklers hiss over perfect lawns, and kids chase each other with ice cream sticky hands. That's what sold my wife, Laura. After years of me working late nights and weekends, she wanted peace. She wanted safety. She wanted neighbors who waved from porches and smiled at block parties. And I wanted that for her. For us. For once, I wanted to come home to a place where the weight of the badge didn't follow me through the door. But Whispering Pines wasn't a neighborhood. It was a kingdom. And the HOA, the Homeowners Association, was its iron-fisted royalty. At first, I didn't notice it. The day we moved in, neighbors came bearing casseroles, smiles stretched just a little too wide. I shook hands, thanked them, told them I was looking forward to being part of the community. "You'll love it here," said Mrs. Granger from across the street. Her perfume could have knocked out a horse. The HOA keeps everything perfect. No riffraff, no nonsense. Just rules and order. Rules and order. I should have known right then what that meant. The first letter. It came 3 days after we unpacked the last box. A thin white envelope tucked under our doormat. On the front, HOA compliance notice. Inside, in neat typewritten print, it said, "Violation. Garbage bin visible from street view. Fine, $50. Correction required within 24 hours. I stared at it, half amused. The bin was barely peeking out from the side of the garage, visible maybe 2 inches from the road. "Is this a joke?" I muttered, handing it to Laura. She frowned. "We just moved in. They couldn't give us a week." I shrugged. Petty people need petty power. I paid the fine anyway, just to avoid trouble. But that was only the beginning. The smiles that didn't reach the eyes. The more time we spent in the neighborhood, the more I felt it. That pressure. Every lawn was cut to the exact same length. Every mailbox was painted the same shade of beige. Cars were spotless, never left on the street overnight. It wasn't normal. It was too perfect, like a movie set, where one wrong move could break the illusion. Neighbors smiled, waved, asked polite questions. But the second my back was turned, I felt their eyes. Watching, judging. One evening, I was out washing my police SUV in the driveway. A man walking his dog slowed down, looked at me, and then at the vehicle. "You planning on keeping that thing here?" he asked. I glanced up. "It's my car." "What?" "It's official looking. Intimidating. HOA doesn't usually like vehicles that stand out." I chuckled. "Well, I'm the chief of police. Standing out comes with the job." He didn't laugh. He just pulled his dog along and walked faster. The knock. The real beginning of my war with the HOA came one morning at 7:30 a.m. sharp. I was pouring coffee when the knock came, sharp, precise, like the rap of a gavel. Laura peeked through the blinds. Some woman in a navy suit. I sighed, set my mug down, and opened the door. She stood there like she owned the entire street. Mid-50s, hair in a perfect blonde bob, pearl necklace, clipboard clutched to her chest. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp, dissecting me. "Good morning. You must be Chief Daniels," she said. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed, like she'd said those words 1,000 times. "That's right. And you are?" "Margaret Voss, HOA president." She extended her hand, but it wasn't an offer. It was a demand. I shook it. Her grip was iron. "I wanted to welcome you personally," she continued, stepping slightly closer without being invited. "We're very proud of our community here. Whispering Pines is a model neighborhood, but only stays that way when everyone does their part." I nodded slowly. "I've noticed the rules are strict." Her smile twitched. "Structure ensures harmony. A society without rules is chaos. Chief, I'm sure you understand that better than anyone." "I enforce the law," I said flatly. "Not Lawn Heights." Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Then it returned, brighter, faker. Of course. But here, the HOA rules are the law. You'll find things run smoother if you remember that. She tapped her clipboard. One last thing. The SUV. Official vehicles aren't permitted in driveways overnight. They must be kept in garages. You'll need to correct that immediately. I cross my arms. That's my work vehicle. I need it ready to go at a moment's notice. Emergencies don't wait for garage doors. Her eyes hardened. For the first time, the mask slipped. There was steel underneath the pearls. Well, Chief, she said quietly, I suppose we'll find out soon enough who has the final authority here. She turned and walked away, heels clicking against the pavement like gunshots. Laura came up behind me. What was that about? I stared at Margaret's retreating figure. My gut told me the truth, even then. That wasn't a welcome visit. It was a warning. I thought Margaret's little speech was the end of it. Just another control-obsessed HOA president flexing her tiny muscles. I'd dealt with worse. I ran a department full of hardened cops. I wasn't going to lose sleep over a woman with a clipboard. But Whispering Pines had a way of getting under your skin. The letters multiply. Over the next week, the envelopes multiplied. Every morning when I stepped outside, there they were, tucked under the doormat, wedged into the mailbox, even taped to the door. One read, violation. Grass length exceeds HOA standards. Correction. Trimmed to 2.5 inches or fine $75. Another. Violation. Porch light too bright. Correction. Replace bulb with HOA-approved wattage. And then, violation. Unauthorized vehicle in driveway. Correction. Relocate or face towing at owner's expense. It was absurd. My lawn had been mowed 3 days earlier. My porch light was standard. And the unauthorized vehicle. That was my department-issued SUV, the one I'd spent 2 decades earning the right to drive. Laura tried to laugh it off at first. It's like living in some Stepford suburb, she said, holding up one of the letters with mock seriousness. Your garbage can is 1.2 inches off regulation distance, Chief. A crime against humanity. I smiled, but underneath, anger was brewing. It wasn't the fines. It wasn't about money. It was about control. The HOA wasn't trying to keep the neighborhood nice. They were trying to break me. The neighbors. It didn't take long to notice the shift in how neighbors treated us. The friendly waves were replaced by stiff nods. Conversations cut off when I walked by. At first, I chalked it up to gossip. New family, new chief of police, maybe people were intimidated. But one evening, as I was walking the dog, I overheard 2 men standing by a lamppost, speaking in low voices. He thinks the badge makes him untouchable. Margaret says he'll fold. They all do. Better hope so. If he doesn't, it won't just be fines. They fell silent when they saw me. One gave a tight smile, the other just walked away. The air felt heavier after that, like the whole neighborhood had been given instructions on how to treat us. Laura's fear. Laura wasn't blind to it either. She started closing the blinds earlier, locking the doors even in the afternoon. One night, as I came home late, I found her sitting on the couch, staring at the door. Everything all right? I asked, setting my keys down. She hesitated. Then she whispered, I think someone was watching the house tonight. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I was in the kitchen. I looked out the window and saw a figure by the mailbox. Just standing there, watching. When I turned on the porch light, they walked away. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't paranoia. I trusted Laura's instincts as much as my own. They're trying to intimidate us, I said. She looked at me with wide, fearful eyes. But why? We haven't done anything wrong. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The HOA meeting. A few days later, an official-looking notice arrived, stamped with the HOA seal. Mandatory attendance. Monthly HOA board meeting. Failure to attend will result in penalty fees and suspension of community privileges. I considered tossing it straight into the trash. But something told me this was more than a meeting. This was a stage, a place where Margaret would make her move. The night of the meeting, Laura insisted on coming with me. We walked into the community center, and every head turned. The room was filled with neighbors, all sitting in perfect rows of folding chairs. At the front, behind a long table, sat the board members. And in the middle, like a queen on her throne, was Margaret Voss. She smiled as we entered, but it wasn't a welcome. It was triumph. "Chief Daniels," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "So glad you could join us." I nodded stiffly. "You made it mandatory." Laughter rippled through the crowd, low and mocking. My wife squeezed my hand. Margaret tapped her papers. "We have several agenda items tonight. But first, we must address a pressing issue: non-compliance." All eyes turned toward me. Margaret listed off the so-called violations: the SUV, the porch light, the lawn. Each one read aloud like charges in a courtroom. "Rules apply to everyone," she said smoothly. "Even law enforcement. Perhaps especially law enforcement." I stood, my voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, you're overstepping. HOA regulations are not laws. And threats of towing, harassment, and surveillance cross into criminal territory." A murmur spread through the crowd. Margaret's smile faltered just for a second, but she recovered quickly. "Chief, we only want what's best for the community," she said sweetly. "If you can't abide by our standards, perhaps Whispering Pines isn't the right place for you." That was it. The line had been drawn. This wasn't about lawn care or porch lights. This was about power. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. I didn't spend 20 years protecting this city just to be bullied in my own neighborhood. "If you think you can intimidate me, you'll regret it." For the first time, Margaret's mask slipped. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw tightened. Then she smiled again, slow and cold. "We'll see, Chief. We'll see." The night after. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the house. At 2:17 a.m., I saw them. Two figures moving across the street, dressed in dark clothing. They stopped near my driveway, crouching low. I slipped out the back door, moving silently along the side of the house. My hand rested on the grip of my service weapon. But when I rounded the corner, they were gone, vanished into the night. On the ground near the SUV, I found a small slip of paper tucked under the wiper blade. In neat, typed letters, it read, "You can't police us all." I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't petty HOA enforcement anymore. This was a threat. The note sat in my hand like a shard of ice. "You can't police us all." It was typed, cold, impersonal, and yet it was personal enough to send a shiver through me. I'd seen threats like this before in my career. Gang members trying to scare officers off their block. Drug lords warning detectives to stop poking around. But this wasn't scrawled on a bathroom wall or whispered in an alley. This was left under the windshield of my SUV, parked in my own driveway, in what was supposed to be the safest neighborhood in the city. I slipped the note into an evidence bag I always kept handy. Old habits die hard. Then I sat back on the porch, waiting, watching. The night was silent, too silent. No dogs barking, no cars passing, no late-night joggers. Just stillness. It felt orchestrated, like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. The morning after, by sunrise, the note still burned in my pocket. Laura noticed immediately. "You didn't sleep." "No," I admitted. I slid the evidence bag across the counter. "They left this." She picked it up with trembling fingers, reading the typed words. Her face drained of color. This is serious, Michael." I nodded. "Yeah, it is." She set the bag down carefully, as though it might explode. "You going to the police?" I almost laughed. "I am the police. But if I file this through the system, it becomes a mess. Reports, media, questions I don't want to answer yet. Not until I know who's behind it." "You know who's behind it," she whispered. I did. Margaret Voss. Another visit. 2 days later, she came back. No letter, no meeting, just her standing in my driveway again, this time with 2 board members flanking her like bodyguards. "Chief," she said cheerfully. "Lovely morning, isn't it?" I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Margaret?" Her smile never wavered. "Oh, nothing. Just checking in. You seemed tense at the meeting. I hope you understand we're not your enemy. We just want cooperation. Cooperation or obedience." I asked flatly. One of the men shifted uneasily, but Margaret's smile grew sharper. "Call it what you will. In Whispering Pines, unity is survival. When one house ignores the rules, the whole community suffers." I stepped closer. "Leave my family out of this." Her eyes gleamed. "Your family will be safe as long as you don't make trouble." It wasn't even veiled. It was a direct threat, delivered with a smile. Laura opened the front door just then, holding her coffee, and froze at the sight of the trio. Margaret turned her gaze on her, voice syrupy sweet. "Lovely house you've got, Mrs. Daniels. Would be a shame if the HOA had to take action." Laura's cup rattled against the saucer. "Excuse me?" Margaret turned back to me. "Think it over, Chief. Are you going to fight us? Or are you going to live peacefully, like everyone else?" She turned, heels clicking, her entourage following. I stood there, fists clenched, every instinct screaming to cuff her on the spot. But she hadn't broken a law, at least not one I could prove yet. And that was her power. The Watchers. That evening, I noticed it again. The Watchers. Two silhouettes across the street, leaning against a lamppost, never moving. When I stepped onto the porch, it didn't flinch. Just stood there, staring. I walked toward them, slow and deliberate. But halfway across the street, they turned in unison and walked away. Not hurried, not afraid, just gone. When I got back to the house, Laura was pale. "They're everywhere," she whispered. "I saw one behind a fence earlier, just standing there." I pulled her close. "Listen to me. This isn't normal. This isn't just an HOA flexing its rules. This is organized, coordinated." Her voice trembled. "Organized by who?" I looked back at the darkened street. The silence. The perfect lawns. The drawn blinds. "By everyone," I muttered. The breaking point. The final straw came on a Saturday morning. I stepped outside to grab the newspaper, and my SUV was gone. My heart stopped. I spun, scanning the street. Empty. Silent. Then I saw the tire marks across the driveway. They'd towed it. I stormed back inside, grabbing my phone, dialing the precinct. "This is Chief Daniels. My department-issued vehicle has been stolen. I want an APB now." Within minutes, patrol cars fanned out. And less than an hour later, I got the call. They'd found it, dumped in a parking lot on the edge of town. Stripped, lights smashed, windows shattered. Someone had turned my badge of honor into a pile of wreckage. I drove out there myself, stood over the wrecked SUV as the crime scene unit dusted for prints. And on the cracked windshield, taped in the center, was another note. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten, scrawled in thick black ink. "Quit fighting us. Or next time, it won't be your car." I stood there, fists trembling, the sound of my own pulse roaring in my ears. This wasn't harassment anymore. This wasn't about grass or porch lights. This was war. The decision. That night, I sat with Laura at the kitchen table. The wreck of the SUV still fresh in my mind. The note burning in my pocket. "I should move us out," she said quietly. "This place isn't safe. We can find another house, somewhere without all this madness." I shook my head. If we run, they win. And if Margaret thinks she can scare me off, she doesn't know who she's dealing with. Laura's eyes glistened with tears. "But they're not just targeting you. They're targeting us. Me. Our home. I don't want to wake up and find out they've done something worse." I took her hands. "I swear to you, I'll protect us. But I can't back down. Not from this. Not when I know what's happening here. They've crossed the line from petty control to criminal activity. And I won't let them get away with it." Her lip quivered, but she nodded. "Then you'd better be ready, because they're not going to stop." I leaned back, staring out the window into the dark. She was right. Margaret wouldn't stop. Not until I was broken, or until I broke her. And as the shadows shifted outside, I realized something chilling. The HOA didn't just want control. They wanted me gone. Open Book Chapter 2. The HOA tightens the noose. Part 1. The second knock. The sun rose the next morning, but peace never followed it. After the wreck of my SUV and the chilling note, Laura begged me to let it go. "Maybe they'll stop if you stop pushing," she whispered at breakfast, her hands trembling around her coffee mug. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But the words on that note kept flashing in my head. "Quit fighting us. Or next time, it won't be your car." This wasn't about lawn heights anymore. This wasn't about trash cans. This was war. And if there's one thing I've learned in 2 decades of police work, it's this. Once someone escalates to violence, you either match them or you get buried. The knock came at 9 o'clock sharp. 3 heart raps. The same rhythm as before. I opened the door, and there she was again. Margaret Voss. Perfect navy suit. Clipboard. Pearls. Same cold eyes. She didn't bother with greetings this time. She simply handed me a paper. Violation notice, she said flatly. I scanned it. My jaw tightened. Violation. Unauthorized parking of emergency vehicle. Fine. $500. Correction required immediately. You have got to be kidding me, I growled. You destroyed my SUV. Now you're fining me for not parking it in my garage. Her lips curled into that fake HOA smile. The HOA has nothing to do with whatever happened to your vehicle. Perhaps if you didn't draw so much attention to yourself, Chief, unfortunate incidents like that wouldn't occur. It was a threat sugar-coated with legalese. I stepped closer, towering over her. Listen carefully. Vandalism is a crime. Harassment is a crime. If you or anyone under your little HOA committee had anything to do with that SUV, I'll bury you in charges. Understand? Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes told the truth. Oh, Chief, she said softly, you enforce your laws. We enforce ours. In Whispering Pines, our laws matter more. She turned and walked away, heels clicking like hammers on a coffin lid. Laura gripped my arm as I shut the door. She's not going to stop, is she? I shook my head slowly. No, she's just getting started. Part 2. The Spying Neighbors. That afternoon, I decided to test just how deep this rabbit hole went. I parked myself at the front window with a notebook. For 2 hours, I just watched, observed, took notes like it was a surveillance op. Why saw chilled me. At least 4 different neighbors took slow walks past our house, phones in hand. They weren't exercising. They were filming, documenting, reporting. Every 30 minutes, a silver sedan cruised past at a crawl, tinted windows rolled halfway down. Same car, same driver, every loop. By evening, a small drone buzzed overhead, hovering just long enough to make Laura duck inside in fear. This isn't a neighborhood, I muttered, watching the drone drift off. It's a surveillance state. Laura was pale. We can't live like this, Michael. I clenched my jaw. No, we can't. Which means I'm going to find out exactly who's behind it. That night, I dug into public records. Whispering Pines HOA wasn't just a local committee, it was registered as a nonprofit corporation. The board had 6 members. Margaret was president. Vice president was a man named Harold Green, a retired banker. Treasurer, Nancy Ellis, a woman who'd lived in the community for 20 years. The others were the same faces I'd seen at the meeting, all ordinary names. But the money? That was where it got interesting. The HOA collected nearly $500,000 annually in dues for maintenance and community projects. Except there were no visible projects beyond manicured lawns and repainted fences. Where was that money going? I knew the smell of organized crime when I caught it, and Whispering Pines stank of it. Part 3. The Fake Cops. It was close to midnight when I heard the sound. Engines. Multiple. I grabbed my sidearm, peeked through the blinds. 2 black SUVs rolled up silently, stopping right in front of my house. Doors opened, and 6 men climbed out, dressed in dark tactical gear, badges gleaming on their chests. Laura gasped. Oh my God, Michael, police? I frowned, heart pounding. No, something was off. Their uniforms were wrong. The patches weren't regulation. The badges looked cheap, too shiny, like props. And not one of them carried themselves like a real cop. This wasn't backup. This was theater. A man with a bullhorn stepped forward. Chief Daniels, step outside. You're under arrest for repeated HOA violations. I almost laughed. Almost. But the cold knot in my stomach stopped me. They weren't here to make me laugh. They were here to make me disappear. Laura clutched my arm, shaking. What do we do? I whispered, get my badge. Get my service radio. I shoved open the door and stepped onto the porch, holding my hands loose at my sides, gun still holstered. Evening, gentlemen, I called out, voice steady. Which department are you with? County? State? Federal? The man with the bullhorn hesitated. We're with Community Enforcement Division. Special Unit. I smirked. Never heard of it. You boys want to show me your post certifications? Department IDs? Or maybe the arrest warrant you supposedly have? They shifted uncomfortably. One of them whispered something to another. I took one step forward, voice hard now. I am Chief Michael Daniels, head of the City Police Department. I am the law in this jurisdiction. and you are impersonating officers of the law, which means you're committing a felony punishable by up to 5 years in federal prison. The silence that followed was electric. Finally, the bullhorn man barked. You think you scare us? You're outnumbered. I drew my weapon in a flash, the porch light gleaming off the barrel. Try me. They froze. 6 men, supposedly tough enough to drag me out of my home, and not one of them dared move. The bullhorn lowered. His mask cracked. He wasn't a cop. He was an actor in a cheap costume, playing a part he didn't believe in. Finally, he growled, "This isn't over, Daniels. You've been warned." One by one, they climbed back into their SUVs. Engines roared, tires squealed, and just like that, they vanished into the night. Laura collapsed against me, sobbing. "Michael, they were going to take you." I wrapped my arm around her, but my eyes stayed fixed on the dark street. "No," I whispered. "They were going to try." And now, the war had gone from whispers and fines to open attacks. And I was done playing defense. Open Book Chapter 3, The Enemy Within the Neighborhood. Part 1, The Silence After the Storm. The night after the fake arrest attempt, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside felt like another intrusion. Laura lay curled against me, her breath shaky, her eyes wide in the dark. I tried to stay calm, but my mind ran through every possibility. 6 men had stood outside my house, dressed like law enforcement, ready to drag me away in front of my wife. That wasn't intimidation anymore. That was a declaration of war. At dawn, I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table, badge and service pistol laid out in front of me, like reminders of who I was. Chief of Police, a man sworn to uphold the law. And yet, in Whispering Pines, the law was being mocked, twisted into some grotesque imitation by an HOA drunk on power. The phone buzzed. It was my deputy, Carla. "Chief, your SUV insurance says it wasn't random vandalism. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. It looks organized." "I know," I muttered. "You know? Sir, do you want me to send a unit by? Extra patrols?" I hesitated. "No, not yet." Because what could I say? That the very people behind it were hiding in plain sight, wearing smiles by day and tactical gear by night? That would sound insane, but I knew better. I looked out the window. Across the street, Mr. Granger was watering his lawn, glancing at my house every 30 seconds. The silver sedan rolled past again, as casual as ever. They were still watching, still testing, still waiting. And if I called them back up too early, if I treated this like just another crime, the HOA would tighten its mask and slip back into the shadows. No, I needed proof. I needed a crack in their armor. And I was about to get one. Part 2, The Whisper of Betrayal. It happened at the grocery store. I'd taken Laura with me, partly because she needed a break from staring at the blinds all day, partly because I didn't want to leave her alone. We were halfway through the cereal aisle when a voice whispered, "Chief Daniels." I turned. A woman stood there, late 40s, nervous eyes darting around like a rabbit surrounded by foxes. I recognized her from the HOA meeting. Nancy Ellis, the treasurer. She stepped closer, voice trembling. "Don't react. Don't make it obvious. Just listen." My hand brushed instinctively toward my hip. Not for my gun, but for readiness. "I'm listening." Her lips quivered. "You don't belong here. You never did. Margaret, she won't stop. You embarrassed her, and she'll make you pay." "Tell me something I don't know," I said quietly. Nancy's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want this. I thought the HOA was about community, about order. But it's not. It's about control. Money. Power. Margaret and Harold, she swallowed hard. They've been funneling the HOA dues into private accounts. They're using us like pawns. I leaned in, voice sharp. "You have proof." She nodded quickly. "Bank statements. Emails. Minutes from secret meetings. I copied some of them. I thought maybe, one day, I'd need them. But if they find out..." Her voice cracked, eyes darting again. I placed a hand on her cart, steadying her panic. "Listen to me. You're doing the right thing. Meet me tomorrow. Somewhere safe. Bring what you have." Her eyes filled with both relief and terror. "The old storage facility off Mill Road. Noon. Don't tell anyone." She started to turn away, then froze. Her face went pale. I followed her gaze. 2 aisles down, Margaret stood, watching, smiling. She didn't move closer. She didn't confront us. She just stood there, holding a box of cereal, her eyes locked on Nancy like a hawk watching a mouse. Nancy's breath hitched. She knows. I whispered, "Go. Now. Don't look back." Nancy pushed her cart and walked away as quickly as she could. Margaret never moved, never blinked. But her smile widened. I knew right then. Tomorrow's meeting might never come. Part 3. The Trap on Mill Road. Noon came too slowly, every hour dragging like chains across concrete. Laura begged me not to go. "Michael, it's a trap." "You know it is." I holstered my weapon, slid my badge into my jacket. If Nancy really has proof, this is the break we need. And if it's a trap, then I'll finally see how far they're willing to go. The storage facility was nearly abandoned, rows of rusted roll-up doors stretching into the distance. The air smelled of oil and dust. I parked my unmarked sedan, scanning the lot. Empty. Too empty. I walked toward Unit 117, the one Nancy had mentioned. My footsteps echoed on the cracked asphalt. Chief Daniels. Her voice. Shaky, desperate. Nancy stepped out from behind the unit, clutching a manila folder to her chest. Her face was pale, sweat beading on her forehead. "You came," she whispered. "I didn't think you would." I said I would. I nodded to the folder. "That the evidence?" She started to answer, then froze. Her eyes went wide. Engines roared. From both ends of the row, black SUVs screeched in, boxing me in. Doors slammed. Men in the same fake tactical gear poured out, weapons raised. Nancy screamed. "I told you," she knows. Margaret stepped out of the lead SUV, heels clicking on the pavement. Calm, confident, holding her clipboard like a sword. "Well, Chief," she called, her voice echoing between the storage units. "Looks like you've been outvoted." Again. The men closed in. Nancy clutched my arm, sobbing. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I shoved her behind me, gun drawn in a flash. My badge gleamed in my other hand. "Drop it," I barked. "Every one of you. Impersonating an officer, armed assault, conspiracy. This ends right here." They hesitated. Their fake courage wavered again. But Margaret just smiled. "Oh, Chief. Still clinging to your badge. Still thinking the law means something here." She raised her hand. "Take him." The men moved. I fired once into the air. The sound cracked like thunder, echoing across the facility. Everyone froze. Everyone except Margaret, who only tilted her head, still smiling. "This isn't over," I growled. "Not by a long shot." She leaned forward, eyes glinting. "You're right. It's only beginning." And with that, she signaled. The SUVs backed away. The men retreated. Nancy collapsed to her knees, clutching the folder like it was her last breath. I helped her up, my own heart still pounding. "You're with me now. They know you're a leak. You'll never be safe again." Tears streamed down her face. "Then I'll help you burn them to the ground." And as the engines faded into the distance, I knew one thing for certain. The HOA had declared war. And I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was going on the attack. Open Book Chapter 4, The First Counterattack. Part 1, The War Room. I've been in plenty of tactical planning rooms over the years, SWAT staging areas, homicide task forces, federal briefings. But this was the first time my war room was my own garage. The SUV was gone, so I cleared space. A folding table stood in the middle, covered in files, photos, and evidence bags. A whiteboard leaned against the wall, lines connecting names to arrows, arrows connecting to crimes. Nancy sat across from me, wringing her hands, the manila folder still clutched like a lifeline. She looked 10 years older than when I'd first met her at the store, fear carving lines into her face. Laura hovered nearby, handing me coffee, her eyes sharp despite her fear. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was angry. That made 2 of us. "All right," I said, flipping through the documents Nancy brought. "Show me what we've got." Her hands trembled as she slid forward the first set of papers. Financials. Monthly dues collected, roughly $40,000 a month. But less than half is accounted for in legitimate expenses. Landscaping, pool maintenance, minor repairs, those are real. But the rest, is funneled elsewhere. I finished scanning. Private accounts? She nodded. Margaret and Harold, the vice president. They've been siphoning money for years. Vacations, offshore transfers, real estate investments. I copied everything I could, but if they realize these papers are missing, they already suspect, I muttered, remembering the SUVs at the storage lot. Nancy flinched. Then I'm dead. I leaned forward, voice hard but steady. Not while I'm here, but I need more than money trails. I need proof of intimidation. Threats. The fake cops. The surveillance. She hesitated. Then she pulled out her phone. I can get that. I'm on the HOA email chain. They use coded language, but if I play it right, I can leak you everything. Laura's voice cracked. You can't go back in there, Nancy. They'll know you've switched sides. Nancy gave a bitter laugh. They already know. The only question is whether I'm still useful to them or expendable. Her words hung heavy in the air. I marked the whiteboard with red ink. HOA equals organized crime. Fraud. Intimidation. Impersonation. This ends now, I said quietly. They've been running Whispering Pines like a dictatorship. That ends today. I'm done being on defense. Nancy's eyes flickered with both hope and dread. What are you going to do? I looked at her, then at Laura, then back at the whiteboard. Something Margaret doesn't expect. I'm going to make the neighbors doubt her. Part 2. Breaking the illusion. The HOA's real weapon wasn't fines or threats. It was control of perception. Everyone believed Whispering Pines was perfect, safe, untouchable. Margaret's illusion of order kept them compliant. If I could crack that illusion, even slightly, the neighbors would start asking questions. And dictatorships fall fast once doubt spreads. I started small. Late one night, I taped copies of the fake Community Enforcement Division badge onto several neighborhood lampposts. Underneath, I printed in bold, impersonating police officers is a felony. Up to 5 years in federal prison. The next morning, whispers spread like wildfire. Neighbors lingered on sidewalks, pointing, frowning. By noon, Margaret had ordered every notice torn down. But it was too late. Seeds of doubt had been planted. Then came strike 2. Nancy slipped me access to one of the HOA's private meetings. They weren't in the clubhouse this time. They were in Harold Green's basement. I parked down the street, slipped in through the back with Nancy's spare key, and placed a small audio recorder under the sofa. Why capture made my blood run cold. Margaret's voice, sharp and icy. He's making us look weak. The neighbors are starting to ask questions. That cannot happen. Another man, Harold, grunted. Then we escalate. More fines. More pressure. We can stage another incident. Margaret again, no. This time we make it public. If Daniels won't bow, then we humiliate him until his badge is worthless. I clenched my fists as I replayed it later in the garage. They weren't just after me anymore. They wanted to strip me of authority, piece by piece, until even my own neighbors saw me as powerless. Laura's face was pale. Michael, they're trying to destroy you. Good, I muttered, because now I know exactly how to destroy them back. Part 3. The public showdown. It happened at the next community gathering. The HOA called it Family Fun Day. Barbecue, games, music on the clubhouse lawn. But it was also propaganda, another chance for Margaret to parade her perfect community in front of everyone. Laura begged me not to go. They'll set you up again. I kissed her forehead. That's the plan. When I arrived, conversations quieted. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. Some nervous, some hostile, some curious. Margaret stood near the stage, pearls gleaming in the sun, clipboard in hand. Chief Daniels, she said sweetly, loud enough for everyone to hear. I wasn't sure you'd join us after recent events. I smiled thinly. Wouldn't miss it. She tilted her head. I do hope you finally decided to play by the rules. After all, Whispering Pines thrives on unity. I stepped forward, raising my voice just enough. Unity isn't built on fear, Margaret, or on fake officers showing up at people's doors. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Margaret's smile stiffened. Excuse me, she said, feigning innocence. I held up a photo, one of the flyers I'd posted of the fake badge. Last week, 6 men dressed as officers tried to arrest me in front of my wife. Not real cops. Pretenders. a crime punishable by 5 years in federal prison. Someone here ordered that. Neighbors began murmuring. Uneasy, doubtful. Margaret's voice sharpened. That's a serious accusation, Chief. Perhaps the stress of your position is clouding your judgment. I pulled out my phone, pressed play. Margaret's voice filled the speakers, clear and cold from the recording in Harold's basement. He's making us look weak. If Daniels won't bow, then we humiliate him until his badge is worthless. The lawn went silent. Dozens of eyes snapped to Margaret. Her mask cracked for the first time. Her smile faltered. Then, like the predator she was, she straightened and raised her voice. Fake recordings. Lies. This man is trying to destroy our community. Are you going to let him? Some neighbors looked convinced. Others looked shaken. The illusion wasn't shattered yet, but it was cracking, and Margaret knew it. She leaned close, her voice low enough only I could hear. You think you've won, Chief? You haven't even seen what I'm willing to do. Her eyes gleamed with a fury that sent a chill down my spine. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't just a corrupt HOA president. She was a zealot, and zealots don't back down. Open Book Chapter 5, Margaret's Revenge. Part 1, Shadows at the Door. The first sign came at dawn. Laura was making coffee, still half asleep, when she noticed an envelope slid under the front door. She bent down, thinking it was a flyer or neighborhood notice, but the paper felt heavier. Her scream jolted me awake. I rushed into the kitchen, heart pounding, and saw her clutching the letter. Her hands trembled as she handed it to me. The envelope bore the HOA's embossed seal. At first glance, it looked official, but when I unfolded the letter inside, my blood went cold. Stop, or she's next. That was it. 4 words. No signature, no explanation. Just raw threat. Laura's eyes filled with tears. Michael, what does it mean? Who's she? I swallowed hard, staring at the paper. Nancy, I said quietly. Her face went pale. Before I could say more, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You can't protect everyone, Chief. Choose wisely. I gritted my teeth. This was no longer just intimidation. It was psychological warfare. They wanted me to live in fear, to doubt my every move, to second-guess where the next strike would land. That morning, I called Nancy. No answer. By noon, I drove to her house. Curtains drawn. Mail piled up at the door. When I knocked, it took almost a full minute before she cracked the door open. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face pale. Michael, she whispered, looking around nervously before pulling me inside. Her kitchen table was a mess. Papers, wine glasses, her phone buzzing with anonymous messages. She showed me the latest one. We know where you sleep. Her hand shook as she clutched the phone. They're watching me. I can feel them out there. Every time I close my eyes, I think someone's going to break in. I can't live like this. I set my jaw. Nancy, listen to me. They're trying to break you. That's their play. If you give in, they win. Her voice cracked. They'll kill me. You don't understand, Michael. Margaret isn't just bluffing. She means it. I grabbed her trembling hands, forcing her to look at me. You're not alone. Not anymore. I'll protect you. But in the pit of my stomach, I wondered if I'd just made a promise I couldn't keep. Part 2. Eyes in the dark. The threats didn't stop. They escalated. That night, Laura and I were returning from dinner when she froze halfway up the driveway. Michael, she whispered, pointing. Across the street, 3 men in hoodies stood shoulder to shoulder, watching silently. Their faces were hidden in shadow, but I could feel their eyes drilling into us. I stepped forward, hand on my concealed weapon. Can I help you? They didn't answer, just stood there. One of them pulled out a phone, lifted it, and snapped a picture of us. That was enough. I stormed across the street, but before I reached them, they dispersed, slipping into the shadows between houses, silent as ghosts. Laura's voice trembled. Michael, what if they're here all the time? What if they're watching us even now? I scanned the street, every dark window and parked car suddenly looking like a pair of eyes. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside set me on edge. I found myself patrolling my own backyard with a flashlight, gun drawn, like some paranoid rookie. But it wasn't paranoia. At 2:13 a.m., I checked the porch camera. A black SUV idled at the end of the street. Headlights off. No plates. I stepped outside, aiming the flashlight, but the SUV rolled away into the darkness before I could even raise my phone. The next morning, Laura confronted me in the kitchen, her voice breaking. "Michael, this isn't just about you anymore. They're coming after me. After us. What if next time they don't just watch? What if they do something worse?" I pulled her into my arms, holding her as she shook. "I won't let that happen. I swear to you." But my words felt hollow, because for the first time, I wasn't sure I could stop them. Part 3. Margaret's Message. The breaking point came at the next HOA meeting. I didn't plan on attending, but Nancy begged me. "You need to see it," she said. Her voice was raw, desperate. So I went. The clubhouse was packed, neighbors buzzing in uneasy chatter. Margaret stood at the podium, pearls gleaming, smile razor-sharp. "Welcome, everyone," she said, her voice dripping with sugar. "Tonight we discuss the future of Whispering Pines. A future free from corruption, dishonesty, and, most importantly, outsiders who bring danger to our perfect community." Her eyes locked on me. The crowd followed. I stood in the back, jaw clenched, every instinct screaming at me to shut her down. But then she clicked a remote, and the projector lit up the screen behind her. It was me. Photographs. Taken at night. Grainy, but clear enough. Me patrolling my backyard with a gun. Me storming across the street toward the hooded men. Me sitting with Nancy at her kitchen table. Margaret's smile widened. "Our so-called chief has been running his own investigations. Threatening neighbors. Meeting secretly with certain individuals. Carrying weapons on community property." Gasps filled the room. "Now," she continued, "I ask you all, does this sound like the behavior of someone who protects us? Or someone who endangers us?" The crowd began murmuring. Doubt spreading. Exactly as she planned. Nancy's face crumpled in horror. "She turned it all on you," she whispered. Laura gripped my arm, so tightly it hurt. Her eyes begged me to do something. Anything. I stepped forward, my voice booming. "What you're seeing is not the truth. Those photos were taken out of context. What Margaret isn't showing you is the men who stalk my wife. The threats sent to Nancy. The SUV that waits outside our homes at night." Margaret cut me off, her voice sharp as a blade. "Excuses. Lies. Always the victim. Aren't you, Chief?" Her words dripped poison. And the worst part was, I could see some neighbors nodding, believing her. She delivered the killing blow with a smile. Perhaps it's time Whispering Pines considered whether law enforcement truly has our best interests at heart, or whether it's time for new leadership. The crowd erupted. Some clapped. Others shouted. The illusion of unity was gone, replaced by chaos. And in that chaos, I saw Margaret's eyes. Cold. Triumphant. She leaned forward into the mic, her voice like ice. "This is your warning, Chief Daniels. You can't protect everyone. And when the time comes, you'll have to choose your badge or your family." The room roared, neighbors arguing, tension boiling. I stood frozen, Laura clutching my arm, Nancy trembling beside me. For the first time since this war began, I realized Margaret wasn't bluffing. She was declaring all-out war. Open Book Chapter 6, The Counterstrike. Part 1, Rallying the Allies. After the HOA meeting fiasco, the air in Whispering Pines was poison. Neighbors no longer waved when I passed. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared with thinly veiled suspicion. Margaret's poison had spread, her voice echoing in their heads. "He's dangerous. He's corrupt. He can't protect you." I felt it in every step, every look. But I also knew something else. Dictatorships fall when they overplay their hand. Margaret's cruelty had pushed too far. She'd made enemies within her own ranks. And if I could find them, I could flip the balance. I started with Nancy. She was still shaken, shadows under her eyes from nights of no sleep. But she had fire left in her, buried beneath the fear. "They won't stop, Michael," she whispered, clutching her coffee like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "They'll bleed this place dry until there's nothing left. And if anyone stands in their way, they'll destroy them." I finished. She nodded, eyes wet. "I don't know if I can keep doing this. They know where I live. They know I betrayed them. I leaned forward, my voice steady. Nancy, listen to me. You're not alone anymore. You've already done more than anyone else. But I can't win this war alone. I need people like you. People who know the cracks in their armor. Her lip trembled. What can I even do? You've already done it. You've shown me they're not invincible. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. I need access to every email chain, every encrypted message, every scrap of paper you can get. If we build a case strong enough, I could take it outside Whispering Pines. Her eyes widened. Outside. I nodded. FBI. State Attorney. Organized Crime Task Force. I know people who hate imposters like this. For the first time in days, Nancy's shoulders straightened. She nodded slowly. I'll get you what you need. But Nancy wasn't my only ally. That night, I drove 2 towns over to a dingy bar, one cops used when they didn't want to be seen in uniform. I slipped into the back booth where an old friend sat nursing a beer. Detective Carlos Vega. Homicide. Tough as nails. And one of the few men I trusted with my life. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me. Daniels, you look like hell. Feels like it, I muttered, sliding into the seat. We didn't waste time with small talk. I laid it out. The fake officers. The threats. The financial fraud. Margaret's empire of fear. By the time I finished, Carlos was leaning forward, his jaw tight. Jesus Christ, Mike. That's not an HOA. That's a syndicate. Exactly. But they're hiding under the mask of suburban perfection. If I move without proof, it's my word against theirs. I need airtight evidence. And when I bring it, I need backup. Carlos drained his beer, eyes burning. You know I've got your back. But you're walking into a storm, brother. You sure about this? I met his gaze, voice firm. They came after my wife. They're threatening witnesses. They think they can scare me into silence. I leaned back, jaw clenched. It's time they learned what happens when you push a cop too far. Carlos cracked a grin. Damn. All right. Let's burn them down. Part 2. The hunt begins. With Nancy inside and Carlos on the outside, the plan began. First step, follow the money. Nancy funneled me spreadsheets, bank transfers, HOA expense reports. Some are obvious fraud. 40 grand landscaping bills with no receipts. Others were shell corporations tied to Margaret's relatives. Offshore wires. Cash withdrawals in Vegas. It was the kind of trail I'd followed dozens of times in gang cases. But here it was hidden in plain sight, dressed up as neighborhood improvements. I spent nights in the garage war room, red string crisscrossing names on the whiteboard. Laura brought coffee, silent but steady at my side. She knew better than to interrupt when I was in this mode, the hunter mode. Second step, expose the surveillance. Nancy told me where they kept the feeds, hidden cameras disguised as birdhouses, HOA drones disguised as community safety patrols. Carlos pulled strings and got me a tech guy who owed him favors. Within 48 hours, I had access to their entire surveillance grid. And what I saw made my blood run cold. They weren't just watching me. They were watching everyone. Kids playing in yards. Couples arguing in kitchens. Neighbors walking dogs. All logged, time-stamped, cataloged. It was surveillance state horror, masquerading as community safety. I downloaded everything, every clip, every timestamp. Evidence. Ironclad. But the third step was the most dangerous, baiting Margaret into overreach. I needed her to show her true face publicly, in a way no one could spin. So I staged a trap. I wrote a fake email on Nancy's account, carefully crafted. Michael Daniels is compiling evidence. Meeting with outside investigators Friday night at his house. If you want to stop him, now is the time. We sent it through their chain. And then we waited. Part 3, the trap springs. Friday night was quiet. Too quiet. Laura paced the living room, nervous. Nancy sat with us, pale but determined. Carlos was parked down the street in an unmarked car, backup close by. Hours ticked by. Midnight came and went. Then, headlights. 2 SUVs. Blacked out. No plates. Rolling slow down the street like sharks circling prey. My heart pounded, adrenaline kicking in. Showtime, I muttered. The SUVs stopped in front of my house. Doors opened. Half a dozen men in tactical gear stepped out, just like before, fake badges gleaming. But this time I was ready. I stepped onto the porch, badge and sidearm visible. "Evening, gentlemen. Looking for me?" They froze. Confusion flickered. One muttered into a radio. That's when Carlos's car roared to life, headlights flaring. Two more unmarked vehicles pulled in behind the SUVs, boxing them in. The men panicked. One reached for his weapon, bad move. In seconds, Carlos and his team swarmed, guns drawn, commands echoing through the night. "Police! Down! Hands where I can see him!" The imposters hesitated. Then chaos erupted. Two ran. Another raised his gun. A shot cracked the air. Neighbors' lights flicked on, curtains parted. Within moments, three were on the ground, cuffed. Two more tackled in the street. The last bolted into the woods. But the damage was done. The neighborhood saw it all. Not whispers. Not rumors. Not Margaret's propaganda. The truth. Armed thugs in fake uniforms trying to attack a police chief at his own home and getting taken down by real law enforcement. As Carlos dragged one of the men toward a cruiser, he called out to me. "Guess who they're connected to?" I raised an eyebrow. He smirked grimly. Margaret's little empire just cracked wide open. I exhaled, heart still racing, as Laura gripped my hand. Neighbors stood in clusters on their lawns, staring, whispering. The illusion was shattered. But as I scanned the crowd, I saw her. Margaret, standing across the street, arms crossed, pearls gleaming even in the dark. Her face was calm, too calm. And as the last of her imposters were shoved into cruisers, she met my eyes and smiled. Not the smile of someone defeated. The smile of someone who had just moved to the next level. A chill ran through me, because I knew what that smile meant. The war had only just begun. Chapter 7. The Smear Campaign. The neighborhood no longer felt safe. After the night when fake cops tried to drag him out of his own house, only to be stopped by real officers, Michael Daniels thought he had won a small victory. The sight of Margaret across the street, standing in the shadows with her pale smile as those imposters were hauled away, had chilled him to the core. She hadn't flinched, hadn't run. She just watched as if everything was still going according to her plan. And in the days that followed, Michael realized she hadn't been bluffing. She was escalating. The silent neighbors. By morning, the Daniels neighborhood felt different. Where before neighbors waved at Michael, now they turned away. At the corner cafe, conversations hushed when he walked in. Mothers pulled their children closer, as if he was the danger, not the one protecting them. Laura tried to shrug it off. "They're just scared," she whispered, gripping his arm. But Michael knew fear wasn't the reason. This was orchestration. Margaret had poisoned the well. Then the flyers appeared. Every mailbox in the subdivision held a neatly folded piece of paper with a grainy photo of Michael holding his badge and gun during the fake cop standoff. The headline, printed in bold red letters, screamed, "Is this who we want protecting our community?" The text beneath claimed Michael was a violent man who staged threats to make himself look heroic. It accused him of abusing power, bullying residents, and working with criminal allies to create chaos. The neighbors believed it. Nancy rushed to Michael's house, clutching one of the flyers. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "They left this in my mailbox too," she whispered. "People are whispering that you're dangerous, Michael. Some even think you might get suspended." Michael stared at the paper, fury boiling inside him. "Margaret printed this. I can feel it." Laura breaks. For Laura, it became unbearable. One evening she came home from the grocery store, pale and shaken. "They followed me again," she said, her voice cracking. She dropped the bags on the counter, apples spilling across the floor. "Who?" Michael asked, stepping forward. "A black SUV. It trailed me from the market to our driveway. And when I pulled in, it stopped at the curb, and I swear someone was taking pictures." She collapsed into a chair, covering her face. Michael knelt beside her, anger mixing with guilt. "I'll put a patrol in the house. They won't get near you." But Laura shook her head. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Don't you see? This is never going to stop. They're making everyone believe you're the villain. And if something happens to us, people will say you brought it on yourself." Her words cut deep. He had sworn to protect his family. Now, it felt like his very badge was being used as a weapon against them. The police department turns cold. The next blow came from inside the department. When Michael arrived at the precinct the following morning, he noticed how quiet it felt. Conversations cut off when he walked by. His fellow officers, men and women he had worked alongside for years, avoided eye contact. In the chief's office, Captain Lewis, Michael's superior and longtime friend, sat grimly behind his desk. He slid a manila folder across. "You better see this." Inside were formal complaints, dozens of them, signed by HOA members and even a few neighbors. They accused Michael of harassment, unlawful surveillance, threatening residents, and even fabricating crimes. Michael's stomach turned as he read. Every accusation was twisted, distorted, taking truth and bending it until it resembled something sinister. "You know, this is Margaret," Michael said, slamming the folder shut. "She's weaponizing the system." Lewis rubbed his temples. "I believe you. But politics, the mayor's office has been getting calls. If this keeps up, I might have no choice but to put you on leave until it's resolved." The betrayal stung worse than the fake cops ever had. The machine he had devoted his life to was creaking under Margaret's pressure. The setup. That night, the war escalated. Michael was driving home when the police scanner crackled. A call came through. Shots fired on Birchwood Lane. That was only 3 blocks from his house. Without hesitation, he sped toward the location. When he arrived, the street was eerily quiet. No gunfire, no chaos. Just 2 HOA security trucks parked crookedly, their hazard lights flashing. A man stumbled out, clutching his leg, fake blood staining his jeans. "He shot me," the man screamed, pointing directly at Michael. Within seconds, patrol cars screeched up, officers rushing out with guns drawn. "And where I can see them Daniels," one shouted. Michael froze, his heart hammering. "This is a setup," he roared, holding his badge high. But the scene had been crafted too well. A planted victim, fake witnesses already emerging from houses, all pointing fingers at him. He realized with chilling clarity, Margaret wasn't just smearing him. She was building a case to destroy him. The breaking point. By midnight, Michael sat at his kitchen table, staring at the floor. His badge lay in front of him, glinting under the soft lamplight. Laura hovered nearby, silent, watching him. Finally, she whispered, "Maybe you should quit." Michael's head snapped up. "Quit? After everything they've done? I don't want to lose you." Her voice cracked. "I don't care about pride or proving yourself right. I just want my husband back. I want to feel safe again." Her tears shattered him. For a moment, he considered it, walking away, letting Margaret rot in her lies. But then he remembered Nancy trembling when she delivered the flyer. He remembered Laura being stalked, neighbors too afraid to speak the truth, and Margaret's cold, unflinching smile when the fake cops were arrested. No, if he quit now, Margaret wouldn't stop. She'd grow stronger, and she'd destroy every single person who dared to resist. Michael picked up his badge, clenching it tightly in his fist. "She wants war? Then I'll give her one. But on my terms." The cliffhanger. Late that night, as the Daniels house fell silent, Michael stood at the window, watching the street. The cul-de-sac looked peaceful, but he knew the peace was fake. Then, across the street, he saw her, Margaret, standing under a lamppost, wearing her perfect pearls, a small smile tugging at her lips. She raised her phone slowly, deliberately. The faint glow of the screen lit her face as she snapped a picture of him in the window. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wanted him to know she was watching. Michael felt his jaw tighten. His war had just reached its most dangerous stage. Chapter 8. Turning the Tables. Michael Daniels had been pushed to the edge. He had endured the fake officers, the stalking, the poison flyers, and the false accusations. Margaret had turned the neighborhood against him, twisted his badge into a weapon, and nearly staged his arrest on Birchwood Lane. She had humiliated his wife, terrorized Nancy, and nearly broken him in front of his own department. But Margaret made one mistake. She underestimated what it meant to declare war on a police chief. The silence before the storm. The following morning, Michael woke before dawn. He hadn't slept. He stood at the kitchen counter, sipping black coffee, while Laura sat silently, staring at the steam rising from her untouched cup. Her eyes were hollow, still red from crying the night before. Michael, she whispered, what if they actually succeed? What if they take everything from us? Michael set his mug down, his jaw tightening. Then I'll rebuild. But I won't run. Not from her. Not from this. Laura swallowed hard, then finally nodded. Just promise me one thing. Don't let her take you from me. He reached across the table, squeezing her hand. She won't. At that moment, Michael stopped thinking like a victim. He stopped thinking like a husband on the defensive. He was a cop again, and this was his case. Gathering the pieces. By noon, Michael met Detective Carlos Vega in a small diner outside town. Carlos had been his anchor through the storm, skeptical but loyal. You look like hell, Carlos said, sliding into the booth. Feel like it too, Michael muttered. He pulled out a folder thick with notes, photographs, and recordings. But I've got enough here to bury Margaret. Carlos raised a brow. Bury her? Daniels, you've been reacting for weeks. She hits, you cover. She smears, you defend. What do you plan on hitting back? Michael's eyes burned with determination. Now, he spread the evidence across the table. A copy of the fake badge the imposter officers had carried. Surveillance photos showing Margaret's car near the black SUVs used that night. Bank records Nancy had secretly copied, showing suspicious HOA maintenance fees funneled into accounts linked to Margaret. A recording of Margaret screaming at Nancy, threatening her life if she exposed anything. Carlos whistled low. Damn, this is enough to get her arrested. Michael shook his head. Not yet. If we move too soon, she'll spin it as harassment. She still has the neighborhood under her thumb. No, I need her to expose herself in front of everyone. I need the truth so undeniable that not even her lies can survive it. Carlos leaned back, smirking. You're baiting the queen. Michael nodded. Exactly. Setting the trap. That night, the Daniels garage once again became their war room. Nancy joined them, her hands trembling as she sifted through documents. They'll kill me if they find out what I gave you, she whispered. They won't touch you, Michael said firmly. Not while I'm still breathing. Laura placed a gentle hand on Nancy's arm. You're safe here. We're in this together. The three of them worked until dawn. Every record, every memo, every threat Margaret had ever made was organized and connected. Slowly, a picture emerged. A picture of fraud, intimidation, and abuse of power. Finally, Michael leaned back, exhausted but smiling for the first time in weeks. We've got her. Margaret strikes again. But Margaret wasn't sitting idle. 2 days later, Michael woke to find spray paint scrawled across his garage door in bold red letters. Corrupt cop. Neighbors whispered on their lawns as he scrubbed it clean. No one offered to help. A few even sneered. Later that afternoon, a squad car pulled up. Inside was a young officer Michael had trained years ago. He stepped out looking awkward. Chief, I don't know how to say this. There's a warrant request in your name. They're claiming obstruction of justice, falsifying reports. Michael clenched his fists. Margaret had reached deeper than he thought. He looked the officer square in the eyes. Do you believe it? The young man shook his head instantly. Not for a second. But sir, the pressure is coming from upstairs. From people who don't want a scandal. Michael exhaled slowly. He knew then that Margaret's influence had spread like a poison. But that only made him more certain. His plan had to work. The HOA meeting from hell. The perfect stage arrived sooner than expected. A mandatory HOA meeting was scheduled. Community crisis updates. Margaret's doing, no doubt. She intended to tighten her control, using the smear campaign to finish Michael off. Michael showed up late, walking into a packed clubhouse buzzing with chatter. As he stepped inside, conversations died. All eyes turned on him, cold, distrustful, some openly hostile. On the stage, Margaret stood at the podium in her pearl necklace, the picture of suburban respectability. She smiled sweetly. Ah, Chief Daniels, she said, her voice smooth as silk. So glad you could join us. After all, this meeting concerns you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Michael's jaw tightened. He took a seat in the back, silent, letting her play her hand. Margaret clicked a remote, and the projector lit up with images. Michael confronting the fake officers, cropped to look aggressive. Nancy delivering files, twisted to look like she was handing him bribes. A blurred still of Michael near Birchwood Lane, painted as evidence of his violent outburst. Neighbors muttered angrily. Margaret raised her voice. This man, who claims to protect us, has done nothing but terrorize this community. He has abused his power, fabricated crimes, and endangered your families. The time has come to demand his removal from this neighborhood and from the police force. The room erupted in applause. Laura, sitting near the front, looked back at Michael with tears in her eyes. Nancy gripped the edge of her chair, shaking. Michael stood slowly, the room falling quiet as he walked to the center. His voice, when he spoke, was low but thunderous. "You're right about one thing, Margaret," he said. "This meeting is about me, and about you." The reveal. He pulled out his phone and tapped play. The speakers filled with Margaret's own voice, sharp and cruel. "If you don't shut your mouth, Nancy, I'll bury you. Do you understand me? I control this neighborhood. I control the cops. Daniels is finished, and you'll be next." Gasps tore through the crowd. Margaret's face drained of color. She rushed forward, slamming the projector remote. That's doctored," she screamed. But Michael wasn't done. He laid the forged badge of the fake officers on the table. "Recognize this? Your men carried these when they tried to drag me out of my home. Your car was parked half a block away that night. Witnesses saw you." He held up copies of the bank transfers Nancy had risked everything to deliver. "And here's where all the HOA money went. Not to community projects. To your personal accounts. Offshore. Tax-free." The room erupted, but this time in chaos. Neighbors shouted, some turning against Margaret, others stunned silent. Margaret's mask cracked. Her sweet smile twisted into a snarl. "You think this proves anything?" she spat. "You think you can take me down? I own this neighborhood." Michael stepped closer, his voice steady. "Not anymore. You're finished." The explosion. Before Margaret could retort, chaos broke out. The clubhouse doors slammed open. A group of masked men stormed in. The same imposter enforcers Margaret had once used. They carried bats, pipes, one even brandished a knife. Neighbors screamed, ducking under tables. Laura clutched Nancy, pulling her back. Michael's instincts kicked in. He drew his sidearm, his voice booming. "Drop your weapons." For a tense moment, the room froze, the imposters staring at him, the crowd holding its breath. Then, in the back, Michael saw it. Margaret wasn't afraid. She was smiling. This wasn't desperation. It was her final card. Cliffhanger ending. Michael aimed squarely at the lead imposter. "This is your last warning," he growled. The man lunged forward. Screams filled the room. Michael pulled the trigger. Chapter 9. Blood on the floor. The gunshot echoed through the clubhouse like thunder. The masked man dropped, his bat clattering across the tile floor. Neighbors screamed, ducking behind folding chairs. Children wailed as parents dragged them out through side doors. The bright, cheerful community hall, once a symbol of unity, had become a battlefield. Michael Daniels held his stance, sidearm raised, chest heaving. "Everyone down. Stay behind me." The remaining intruders froze. One man raised his pipe halfway before thinking better of it. Another muttered a curse and bolted out the door. Within seconds, the rest followed, leaving their fallen comrade groaning on the floor. Silence fell, a heavy, suffocating silence broken only by sobs and Margaret's sharp, steady voice. "Do you see? Do you all see?" she shrieked, pointing at Michael. "This man is dangerous. He just shot an unarmed neighbor." Gasps spread across the room. Eyes darted between the bleeding intruder and Michael, who still stood tall, his weapon low but steady. Michael's jaw tightened. "Unarmed? He stormed in here with a bat. They came to hurt you, to hurt all of us." Margaret sneered, her pearls glinting under the fluorescent lights. "That's your story, isn't it? Violence. Always violence. You've brought nothing but fear into this community." For a moment, Michael wanted to scream back, to tear her lies apart in front of everyone. But then he saw Laura, crouched in the crowd, holding Nancy's trembling hand. Both looked at him with fear, not of him, but of what might come next. So instead, Michael lowered his weapon, holstered it, and turned to the neighbors. His voice was calm but firm. "Call the police. Get paramedics here. And when they arrive, I'll give them my full report. The aftermath. The authorities arrived within minutes. Sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing against the pristine windows of the HOA clubhouse. Officers poured in, guns drawn, ordering everyone to remain where they were. Michael identified himself, showed his badge, and relayed the attack step by step. But even as he spoke, he could see the doubt in their eyes. Some believed him, others didn't. Margaret stood to the side, whispering urgently to anyone who would listen, spinning her version of the story. By the time paramedics wheeled the wounded intruder out, the narrative was already fractured. Half the neighbors whispered thanks to Michael for saving them. The other half muttered that he had overreacted, that maybe Margaret was right all along. And Margaret knew it. As she passed Michael on her way out, she leaned close enough for only him to hear. Her perfume was cloying, her words venom. You can't shoot your way out of this one, Daniels. I'll see you stripped of that badge before the week is over. Michael didn't flinch. He just stared straight ahead, but inside, rage burned. The department cracks. The next day at the precinct, Michael felt the weight of suspicion hanging over him. Whispers filled the halls. Conversations died when he walked by. In Captain Lewis's office, the tension finally snapped. There's pressure from a mayor, from the city council, Lewis said grimly, sliding a report across the desk. They're calling for an independent review. Margaret claims you orchestrated the entire attack just to make her look guilty. Michael slammed his fist on the desk. She hired those men, Lewis. She staged everything. What more do I need to prove it? Lewis sighed. Evidence, Daniels. Something the DA can hold up in court without it looking like a personal vendetta. Right now, the optics are against you. You fire your weapon in a room full of civilians? That's a political nightmare. Michael leaned forward, his eyes blazing. So what? I just roll over and let her destroy me? Let her keep running this place like her own private empire? Lewis looked torn, guilt etched into his features. Finally, he whispered, I can't protect you much longer. They're talking suspension. Michael walked out, fury pulsing in his veins. Margaret wasn't just attacking his neighborhood anymore. She was dismantling his entire life, piece by piece. Laura's breaking point. That night, the Daniels home felt colder than ever. Laura sat at the dining table, staring at a half-empty glass of wine. Michael tried to reassure her, but her silence cut deeper than any words. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, trembling. I watched you last night, she whispered. The way you stood there, gun in hand. I wasn't afraid of you, Michael. I was afraid for you. Afraid of what this war is turning you into. Michael sat beside her, his hand covering hers. I did what I had to do. If I hadn't fired, someone would have been killed. Tears welled in her eyes. I know, but Margaret's winning. She's making everyone see you as the monster. And I can't lose you. Not to her lies, not to your own anger. Michael pulled her close, his voice breaking. You won't. I swear it. But deep down, he wondered if he could keep that promise. Nancy's desperation. Later that week, Nancy arrived at Michael's doorstep, frantic. Her hand shook as she shoved a USB drive in his palm. They know, she whispered. Margaret found out I've been helping you. She sent people to my house. They follow me to work. I can't do this anymore, Michael. I'm scared. Michael tightened his grip around her shoulders. You're safe here. I won't let her touch you. She shook her head. You don't understand. She has files on everyone. Secrets. Debts. Affairs. She's been blackmailing half the neighborhood for years. That's why no one will stand against her. This drive, it's everything. Proof of her surveillance, her threats, her payments to those imposters. Michael's pulse quickened. Then this is it. This is what we needed. But Nancy's eyes were haunted. Be careful. She'll burn this whole neighborhood to the ground before she lets you in. Margaret's counterattack. That night, Michael loaded the files onto his laptop, scanning page after page. It was all there. Spreadsheets of illegal payments. Recordings of board members plotting against residents. Photos taken from hidden cameras in people's yards and even inside their homes. It was enough to destroy Margaret 10 times over. But just as he started printing, the house went dark. The power cut out, plunging the Daniels home into silence. Then came the sound, the distant hum of an engine. He peered out the window. A black SUV idled at the curb, headlights off. "Laura, stay with Nancy," he ordered, grabbing his gun. He stepped outside, the cool night air thick with tension. The SUV's engine roared, tires screeching as it sped off into the darkness. Michael stood in the driveway, chest heaving, realizing the war had just escalated again. Margaret knew he had her secrets, and she wasn't going to wait around for him to use them. Cliffhanger. The next morning, Michael arrived at the precinct to deliver the evidence. But when he opened his laptop, the files were gone. The USB drive was corrupted, its contents wiped, and waiting on his desk was a single envelope. Inside, one message written in bold, elegant script. "Nice try, Chief, but you're not the only one who knows how to play this game. M." Michael's hands shook as he crushed the note in his fist. Margaret wasn't just one step ahead anymore. She was in his home, in his files, in his world. The war was far from over, and the next move could cost him everything. Chapter 10. The Trap. Morning light crept through the blinds like pale fingers, stretching across Michael's kitchen table. His house was quiet now, too quiet. The neighborhood outside felt like a ghost town. The laughter of kids, the chatter of dog walkers, the hum of sprinklers, all gone. Margaret had turned the entire community into a battlefield, and Michael Daniels stood in the middle of it, stripped of his badge, his allies vanishing one by one. Nancy was gone. His wife barely slept. The neighbors whispered when he walked past. But the worst part was the silence, the kind that made you feel watched even when you were alone. The missing woman. Detectives had come and gone from Nancy's house. They found signs of a struggle, but no leads, no suspects. Michael knew better. He knew who was behind it. Margaret Harlan didn't send warnings twice. But without his badge, he was powerless to officially investigate. So he worked in the shadows. Late that night, Michael sat in his home office, replaying the footage from his dash cam. Hours of nothing but street lights and silence, until something flickered. A faint reflection in his side mirror. Headlights trailing him. He zoomed in, enhanced, and froze the frame. A black SUV. Same one that had idled outside his house. His pulse quickened. The vehicle had followed him from the HOA meeting to the precinct to home. He traced the timestamp. The car had been there right before Nancy disappeared. It wasn't just surveillance, it was coordination. He scribbled a note to himself. Find the SUV. Find Nancy. Laura's plea. "Michael, please," Laura begged that night. "You can't do this alone. You're not even on the force right now. If you go after her." He cut her off, voice steady but cold. "If I don't, she wins. She's not just corrupt, she's dangerous. She's already taken Nancy." Laura grabbed his hand. "And if she takes you next? What then? You think anyone will care? She's turned everyone against you." Michael softened. "You don't understand. This isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone she's hurting, everyone she's silencing." Tears welled in Laura's eyes. "Then promise me you'll come back." He managed a small, sad smile. "Always." But deep down, both of them knew the promise was one he might not keep. The hidden ally. 2 days later, a knock echoed at Michael's door. When he opened it, Captain Lewis stood there, trench coat soaked from the rain, a folder clutched tightly in his hand. "I shouldn't be here," he said quietly, but I couldn't look the other way. He stepped inside and placed a folder on the table. "These are unverified, off the record, but I've been digging. Someone inside City Hall has been approving every one of Margaret's contracts. Surveillance systems, security budgets, even HOA funding." Michael flipped through the papers, his eyes widening. All signed by the same person, Councilman Doyle. Lewis nodded. "He's dirty. He's her protection. You want to take her down? You'll need to go through him." Michael exhaled. "And I'll need proof." Lewis hesitated. "You didn't get this from me, but there's a storage facility on Brookside Avenue. Margaret's name's not on it, but Doyle's is. I'd bet my career that's where she's keeping her real records." Michael grinned for the first time in weeks. "Then that's where this ends." The break-in. Night fell heavy over Brookside Avenue. The storage lot sat on the edge of town, rows of corrugated metal doors glistening in the rain. Michael parked 2 blocks away and slipped through a gap in the fence, flashlight in hand, hood up, gun holstered beneath his jacket. He found Unit 47. The padlock gleamed, brand new. He pulled out a small lockpick set, muscle memory from his years on the force, and worked quickly. Within seconds, the lock clicked open. The metal door groaned as he lifted it. Inside were boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Old HOA documents, binders labeled security contracts, financial allocations, resident reports. He flipped open one binder, a list of names and addresses, red check marks beside several. His blood ran cold when he saw Nancy's name near the top, underlined twice. He flipped another, photos of residents, including himself and Laura. Surveillance reports, notes on their routines, timestamps. And at the bottom of one stack, a manila folder labeled Incident Control, Stage 3. Inside were printed screenshots of emails between Margaret and Councilman Doyle. M. The meeting will force him to act. Once he fires, we have our narrative. D. And the footage? M. Handled. Cameras disabled an hour before start time. He'll look unhinged. Perfect. Michael's hand shook. It was all there. Proof she had orchestrated everything. Suddenly, headlights swept across the storage unit. He froze. A black SUV pulled up near the gate. Doors opened. Footsteps. Check inside, a voice barked. Michael shoved the folders into his backpack, killed his flashlight, and crouched behind a stack of boxes. Two men entered, flashlights sweeping across the room. He's here, one muttered. Michael moved fast, ducking, weaving, slipping into the shadows. One man turned toward a sound behind him, and Michael struck, knocking the flashlight from his hand. The beam flickered wildly as Michael tackled him to the ground, disarming him in seconds. The second man lunged, swinging a crowbar. Michael blocked it, ducked low, and drove his shoulder into the man's chest, slamming him against the wall. The fight ended as quickly as it began. Both men lay groaning on the floor. Michael darted out the back, rain pounding against his face. He sprinted toward his car, tires screeching as he tore down the street, heart hammering like a war drum. He had the evidence, but now they knew he had it too. The fire. By morning, Brookside Storage was gone. An explosion ripped through the facility just before dawn, sending smoke billowing into the sky. Fire trucks roared down the street, sirens screaming. Every unit, every shred of evidence, had been burned to ash. Michael watched the news footage from his living room, fists clenched. The anchor's voice was calm, detached. Authorities are investigating the cause of the explosion at Brookside Storage, believed to be an electrical fault. Electrical fault, right? She'd wiped it all out. Again, Laura came up behind him, her voice trembling. Michael, this is too much. You can't fight someone who owns everything. He turned to her, eyes blazing with determination. Then I'll take away the one thing she doesn't own, her reputation. The broadcast. By nightfall, Michael had a plan. He couldn't trust the police. He couldn't go through official channels. But there was one thing Margaret couldn't silence, the public. He called an old friend, a local news anchor named Jenna Clark. She owed him a favor from a case years ago. Jenna, I have something big, he said. I can prove the HOA president is running an organized scheme, bribery, fraud, even orchestrated assaults. Michael, do you have proof? She asked. I will. Meet me at my place tomorrow night. Bring a camera. He spent the next 24 hours gathering everything left, digital backups, email fragments, photos he'd printed before the drive was wiped. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to start the fire. When Jenna arrived, she set up her camera, adjusted her mic, and said softly, "You know this could ruin your career." Michael nodded. Then I'll go down doing the right thing. They recorded for over an hour, Michael detailing everything. The fake officers, the sabotage, Nancy's disappearance, the corruption inside City Hall. Jenna promised to air it the next morning. But Margaret wasn't done yet. The visit. That night, as Michael was locking up, headlights filled his driveway. A sleek black sedan. Not the SUV this time. More discreet. The door opened, and Margaret stepped out, immaculate as ever, her smile calm, almost tender. "Michael," she said softly, "you look tired. May I come in?" He didn't move. You've got 10 seconds to get off my property. She chuckled lightly. Always the tough guy. I came to offer peace. Peace, he scoffed. You kidnapped Nancy. You destroyed evidence. You burned that storage lot. Her eyes glimmered. And yet, you can't prove any of it. Do you know why? Because you're predictable. You always play by the rules. That's why I'll always win. Michael stepped closer, his voice a low growl. You think you've won because you can erase files and by politicians? You've made one mistake. Margaret, you made it personal. Her smile faded slightly. Careful, Chief. Threats don't suit you. It's not a threat, he said. It's a promise. Margaret's expression darkened. Then you leave me no choice. She handed him a small envelope. Inside was a single photo, Laura, taken from a distance through their kitchen window. Michael's stomach turned to ice. You stay out of my business, Margaret said softly, or the next picture won't be so harmless. She turned and walked back to her car, her heels clicking against the pavement like gunshots. Michael stood frozen, rage and terror boiling inside him. She had just declared open war. The decision. By midnight, Michael was sitting at his desk, staring at the photo of Laura. Every instinct screamed at him to protect his wife, to walk away, to surrender. But he couldn't. Not after Nancy. Not after everything Margaret had done. He picked up his phone and dialed Jenna. Change of plans, he said. Don't air the interview tomorrow. What? Why? I'm going to give you something better. I'm going to get her confession on camera. He hung up, took a deep breath, and reached for the small recording device he used on undercover cases. Margaret wanted to play games. He was done playing by her rules. The setup. The next morning, Michael showed up at the HOA office. The board members froze as he walked in. Margaret sat behind her polished oak desk, perfectly calm, as if she'd been expecting him. Michael, she said sweetly, how brave of you to show your face. He smiled thinly. I came to apologize. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Apologize? For the misunderstanding. For the drama. You were right. I've been under stress. I just want to put this all behind us. Margaret leaned back, studying him. Go on. I like to make things right, he continued. I still have that recording from the meeting, the one you said was tampered with. Maybe we could fix it together, show everyone we're on the same side. Margaret's lips curved into a sly smile. You see? You could be reasonable. She gestured for him to sit. Fine. Let's talk about the future. Michael sat across from her, slipping his hand casually into his pocket, where the recorder was already running. As they spoke, Margaret became more confident, her words slipping into arrogance. She bragged about her control, her influence, her ability to make anyone disappear if they got in her way. And then she said the words that sealed her fate. I didn't destroy your life, Michael. You did, the moment you thought you could challenge me. You should have taken the deal. But now, you'll lose everything, just like Nancy. Michael froze. What did you say? Margaret smiled. You heard me. He stood, his face hardening. This conversation's over. He turned and walked out, heart pounding, recorder still rolling in his pocket. If you love watching my videos, then make sure to subscribe and like my video.